Hello, and welcome to this second webinar in our series for REACH 2018 registrants. My name is Adam Elwan, and I will be your moderator today. Now, as many of you know, the goal of REACH is to protect human health and the environment, and to promote the use of alternative test methods for hazard assessment, while maintaining the competitiveness of European industry and fostering innovation. One of the key elements of this is to collect information on the chemicals used, manufactured, or imported in Europe. This is done through registration, where companies have to register their substances with us here at ECHA, and to inform us of their properties and measures taken to ensure safe use. The last registration deadline is on the 31st of May 2018 for substances manufactured or imported in quantities of 1 to 100 tons per year per company. We expect that many small companies with little or no experience of REACH will be impacted. This webinar series is intended exactly for those of you that do not have previous experience with REACH. The image you see on your screens shows an overview of all the steps needed for a successful registration. You can find these steps explained in more detail on the REACH 2018 pages on our website, together with key information, guidance, and other support material to help you. We have started to guide you through the 7 steps with our first webinar in June. We introduced you to the startup activities for step 1 that need to be done before moving on to the second step, identifying other companies you will be registering jointly with. This will be the main focus of today's webinar. After the webinar, you will be able to log into REACH IT and retrieve your pre-registration. You will also have a better understanding of how to find the other companies you will be registering with. The webinar program should be visible on your screens. We will start with 2 main presentations, followed by a short demonstration on the REACH IT pre-registration pages. You will also see a short video with companies sharing their experience in getting started, finding other registrants, and working together in SIEFs. We will then conclude with a Q&A session where a selection of the most recurring questions sent during the webinar will be covered by our expert panel. You can submit your questions through the Q&A panel, which should be visible in your webinar window. During the webinar, our panelists will answer your questions via the live chat. We expect several questions and may not be able to answer all of them during the webinar. If your question is not answered, you can submit it to your national help desk or to the ECHA help desk. Their contact information is available on our website, and you can find them using the link visible on your screens. If you experience any difficulties with the webinar tool, you can contact our technical support team also through the Q&A panel. Our first webinar explained that as a first step, you need to know your portfolio of substances and identify them correctly. Now, we move on to the next step, how to find out if your substance has already been registered and how to start working with other companies registering the same substance. I now hand over the floor to my colleagues Catherine and Istvan. Catherine will talk to you about the steps to take if your substance has not yet been registered, and Istvan will present what to do if your substance has already been registered.
Welcome everybody to this webinar. My name is Catherine Cornu and I work on registration matters in ECHA. In this short presentation, I will set out phase 2 of our plan for a successful registration by 2018, following on from the startup activities we covered in phase 1. I will explain the basic principles here, but step-by-step instructions and answers to frequently asked questions are available on our website. So there are 5 key activities in this phase of your preparations for registration. You need to find out if your substances are already registered, verify your pre-registrations, find and contact your co-registrants, establish substance sameness, and then prepare for working together in the SIEF, which is short for Substance Information Exchange Forum, where you will share data on your substance. I will briefly explain these 5 activities for the case where the substance has not been registered and you are looking to form a new SIEF. And then my colleague Istvan will explain how things are different if the substance is already registered and the SIEF exists and you are looking to join. I will go through these activities one by one, but let's first start with the SIEF and why it is important to find your co-registrants. The SIEF is the Substance Information Exchange Forum. It is a specific cooperation of registrants for registering a substance under REACH, and it is usually formalized in an agreement. Cooperation is necessary because under REACH, those registering a same substance have to register that substance jointly, meaning that if you will register a substance, you will have to get in contact with your co-registrants, discuss and work together to agree on the data package for registration and on sharing the costs of that data. The starting point for finding your co-registrants is your pre-registration in REACH IT. All the companies that pre-registered the same substance by EC number or CAS number or sometimes by chemical name have access to a page in REACH IT where all the companies and their contact information are listed. This page in REACH IT is called the pre-SIEF page for the substance. When the co-registrants then agree that they have the same substance, they are by definition in a SIEF, and the obligations for sharing data and replying to requests for data apply, as will be explained in detail in the Phase 3 webinar. The first activity for you in this phase is to find out if your substance is already registered by other companies. This you can find on the ECHA website in different ways. One way is from the homepage, which has a search for substances functionality in the right-hand corner, or by navigating to the registered substances database, which is shown here. Registered substances are nowadays added to the database a few weeks after their registration. The database contains a lot of information on the registered substances, such as the classification and labeling, hazard data, and the names of the registrants. You can search by EC number, CAS number, or chemical name of the substance. You will then find if your substance is already registered or not. Another way to find out if your substance has already been registered is via the list of lead registrants, which is also available on our website. If your substance has not been registered yet, you will need to prepare to form a new SIEF, which I will explain next. On the other hand, if your substance is already registered, then you are looking to join an existing SIEF, and this case will be explained in the next presentation. Your next activity is to verify your pre-registrations. Your pre-registrations give you the right to be on the European market until the registration deadline on the 31st of May 2018. So it is important to verify that you have a pre-registration for each substance you need to register. And we saw in the Phase 1 webinar how to determine which substances you need to register. If you start manufacture or import of a substance that you need to register by 2018, for example, if you are importing a mixture that was recently reformulated and now contains a substance that it did not contain previously, you can do a late pre-registration of the substance in REACH IT and then start to join the preparations for registration. Be aware that you need to late pre-register within 6 months after the start of manufacture or import, and that the possibility to late pre-register ends on the 31st of May 2017, 1 year before the registration deadline. Your pre-registrations are in REACH IT, so if you have not done so yet, now is the time to make or retrieve your REACH IT username and password, and we have advice on our website for the different issues you may encounter with this. While you are checking your pre-registrations, remember that they are the starting point for you to find your co-registrants, but also for your co-registrants to find you, because your contact information from your pre-registration is listed in the pre-SIEF page. So, for those substances you want to register, you should ensure that the correct contact person is mentioned in the pre-registration and that the email address is up to date. And we have a little demo later in the webinar to show you how you can do that. Next, for each substance you want to register, you can check in the pre-SIEF page in ReachIT to find the contact information of your co-registrants. Contacting them needs to happen outside of ReachIT and is usually done by email. You will need to be active here if you want to register your substance. If the substance is critical to your business, you should take the initiative to start the discussions. You can also indicate in ReachIT that you are willing to start up the SIEF formation by clicking the SIEF formation facilitator button, and then you can post a message in ReachIT for your co-registrants. Be aware that by far not everyone who pre-registered will register, so although the pre-SIEF may be large, the SIEF may have few participants, and that it is possible that you will be the only registrant for the substance. So it is important to find that out early on by contacting each other and replying to emails from others contacting you. Then, after you have found the others who will be registering your substance with you, you need to make sure that you actually all have the same substance. If you have the same substance, you will need to register jointly. But if you do not have the same substance, you cannot register jointly. The sameness of substances follows from the substance identification, which we discussed in the Phase 1 webinar. All co-registrants need to take their analytical data and determine the identity and the name of their substance according to the same rules described in the ECHA guidance, and find the identifiers such as EC number or CAS number that fit with the name, considering the composition of the substance and the type of the substance. In principle, if the name of the substance is the same, then the substance is the same. And for well-defined substances, this can be determined quickly, but for complex substances, the discussions may not be so quick. You will later on need to report the conclusions of your discussions in the registration dossier, in the form of a substance identity profile, including its boundary composition. And my colleague Sylvia will explain in her presentation what a substance identity profile is and the boundary composition. If you find that your substances are the same, you and your co-registrants are in a SIEF. The Phase 3 webinar will provide you more information on how to work together in the SIEF, but it would be useful for you to already become familiar with the activities in a SIEF leading to joint registration. And also to become familiar with the roles in a SIEF, the lead registrant and the member registrants, and to know that all co-registrants are responsible for the schedule and progress of the work and the content of the joint parts of the registration. The lead registrant will have to submit the joint registration through ReachIT first, but for all other tasks, you need to decide with your co-registrants on how you work together, who does what, and whether or not to outsource certain tasks. So we've now talked about all 5 key activities of Phase 2 of your plan for registering by 2018, and I will conclude with a few messages for you to take away from this. The first one is to check now on the ECHA website which of your substances have already been registered, because this will determine if you need to form a new SIEF with your co-registrants or if you need to join an existing SIEF. We expect that many new SIEFs will need to be formed for 2018, and we expect many of those SIEFs to be quite small or even registrants alone. Identify now those substances for which you are alone and you have little or no data. Get help if these are business critical substances so you can ensure their registration. Keep an eye on your project plan and your progress for your different substances. and get active in pre-SIEF. If everyone waits for others to take the initiative, you may run out of time to register your substances. And remember that support material is available from the ECHA website by clicking on the Reach 2018 banner, but also from your National Help Desk and from industry associations. This concludes my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is István Mák, and I'm working in the dossier submission and PIC unit in ECHA. Today, I'm here to talk to you about what are the steps to take in case you are trying to register a substance that has already been registered. We will go through the first couple steps of the process that are falling under the phase 2 of the registration roadmap. This will include the following. Verify your existing pre-registrations. Make sure that you are covered regarding your registration obligations, either with a pre-registration or a registration. As my colleague Catherine has covered this topic in her presentation, I will not talk about these steps, but we will go through the following important points. How to check if your substance has already been registered, how to find your lead and co-registrants, the process of agreeing on substance sameness, and finally, we'll briefly cover the SIEF activities. Once you have verified the existence and content of your pre-registrations, you should verify if they have already been registered. The easiest way to do this is through the ECHA website, using the Search for Chemicals functionality. If you find that the substance has already been registered, you can check the list of lead registrants. The document containing the list of all joint submissions can be accessed directly from the Phase 2 web pages. For many of the joint submissions, the name of the lead registrant will also be published in this document. However, this information is only available if the lead registrant has already agreed on the publication. For those substances you have pre-registered, you will always be able to find the joint submission in ReachIT, should one already exist, in which case also the name and contact details of the lead registrant will be available for you. Now you know that your substance has been registered. How to move on from here? You should contact the SIEF. By far, the easiest way forward is to contact the lead registrant using the information found in ReachIT. It is also possible that you have already been contacted by the SIEF or the lead registrant at an earlier stage. If this is the case, you should reply to those messages. Alternatively, you can also consult the pre-SIEF pages in ReachIT, where you can find detailed contact information to all those who have pre-registered the substance. Once you have established contact with the SIEF or directly the lead registrant, the first thing for you to do is to verify if your substance is the same as registered by the SIEF. Compared to a scenario where the SIEF is just being formed, this is a relatively simple task, as a substance ID profile, or SIP, and the boundary composition for the registered substance already exists. So you will only have to check if your substance is covered by that or not. You can learn more about the SIP and the boundary composition from my colleague Sylvia's presentation. Assuming that your substance is covered by the SIEF, you should start participating in the SIEF activities, one of them being the data sharing. You can learn more about data sharing in Phase 3 of the registration roadmap. And to close this presentation, let's recap on the most important points we have gone through. On ECHA's website, you can find information on the status of the substance you intend to register. You can easily find it out if it is registered or not, together with the list of companies who have registered it. If your substance is already registered, contact your co-registrants and find the lead. The list of lead registrants is published. You can find an existing joint submission for your pre-registered substances within ReachIT. Verify if the substance is covered by the substance ID that is existing registration refers to, and if so, start discussion on data sharing. That concludes my first presentation for today. Make sure to stay with us as we will have a demonstration on how you can search for and manage your pre-registrations in ReachIT.
Thank you both for your presentations. So, as you've heard, the first important step is to check on our website whether your substances have already been registered, and then to find your co-registrants and identify those substances for which you are alone. We now move on to the last presentation, which shows you how to find your pre-registrations and your co-registrants in ReachIT. Istvan, please go ahead.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue with our programming for today with a live demonstration on how to use ReachIT with regards to late pre-registrations, pre-SIEF pages, and joint submissions. Let's take a quick look at what we're going to go through. First, I'm going to show you how to submit a new late pre-registration. Then, I'm going to show you how to find your existing pre-registrations within ReachIT. I'm going to then display to you a pre-SIEF page and explain you what you can do there. And last, we're going to learn how to find joint submissions within ReachIT. To get started, let's switch to ReachIT now. I have already logged in as an industry user, and this is the main page of ReachIT, what you can see after logging in. To start with, as I said, we're going to submit a late pre-registration. To do so, go to Menu, and in the Submit section, so in the first column on the left, select the pre-registration section, and from there, late registration. First, ReachIT requires you to identify your substance. I'm going to use a substance today with the following EC number. I typed in the EC number, but I could have used CAS number or a UPAC name, for example, also. And once I typed in, I clicked on search, and ReachIT provides me with the search results. Here you can see, because I use a numerical identifier, ReachIT gave me exactly one result. And as this is my substance, 12-hydroxystearic acid, I'm going to click on the plus sign here to add it as my constituent. As for this presentation, we're going to use this substance as a monoconstituent substance. This is all we have to do as an identifier, as an identification for the substance. Should this be a multi-constituent or a UVCB substance, the previous steps can be repeated as many times as required. But for now, we can click on Continue to Similar Substances. On the Similar Substances page, if you wish, you can provide information on substances that are similar to yours, what you are pre-registering. But for this presentation, we're not going to do this, so we're just going to click on the next one. And we're reaching the field where we have to provide information on the tonnage band, the registration deadline, and the starting date of manufacturing or importing. Given that the last possible registration deadline we have is 2018, 31st of May, all the other previous registration deadlines have passed, that is already pre-selected by ReachIT. We have to select the relevant tonnage band at which we are intending to either manufacture or import the substance. We can do that from the drop-down list. As the registration deadline of 2018 is for the following two tonnage bands, from 1 to 10 tons and 10 to 100 tons, these are the only two options available. let's say that we are going to manufacture our substance between 10 and 100 tons a year. Sorry. As additional information, we have to provide a date at which we have already started the manufacturing or importing of the substance, or at which we intend to start the manufacturing or importing of the substance. As Catherine has told it in her presentation, you have to do this latest within 6 months of the time when you start manufacturing or importing your substance, keeping it in mind that 31st of May 2017 is the last day when you can pre-register a substance. So let's say that we start manufacturing our substance on 1st of December. Now, as we fill this page in completely, we can click on Continue to Contact. On this page, you are required to provide a contact information on a contact person who is assigned to this pre-registration. To do so, click on the orange Assign button. When you did that, a new page comes up and it will provide you with the list of all the existing contacts you have in your ReachIT account. If you do not find any contact, or you do not find the one you would like to use, you can click on this button, create and assign a new contact, and with that you can create a new contact. For this presentation, I'm going to choose myself as the contact person for this pre-registration. And once I did that with the radio button, I can click on the orange Assign button. That gets us back to the previous page. If we would like to, we can also assign a third-party representative to this pre-registration by clicking on the Assign button. But for this presentation, we are not doing that. Therefore, we can click on the Continue to Remarks field. If you would like to provide any further information that you think might be relevant for your potential co-registrants, you can add those remarks here in this field. Again, for the sake of this presentation, we'll skip this step and just click on Continue to Confirmation. We get a last chance to review all the information what we have provided throughout the late pre-registration submission. We can verify if everything what we have entered is correct or not. Should we feel that there is a need for any modification, select the relevant section and click on the relevant orange Edit button. However, if everything is correct as it should be, then click on the large orange button to confirm your pre-registration. Once the pre-registration has been submitted, ReachIT will provide us with a confirmation page, again listing all the information that we have included in the late pre-registration, and also at the same time we immediately get the late pre-registration number. On this very same page, we can download the confirmation as a PDF or directly go to the pre-SIEF pages. Moving on to the next topic of our presentation, how to find your pre-registrations that you have already submitted in ReachIT. One of the methods would be via the reference number history page. To get there, select the menu from the main page, and in the search section, therefore in the second column, select reference numbers. Here, by default, you will get the list of all your submissions that you have, which for certain companies could be a long list. Therefore, it's probably a good idea to filter it down. To start with, we can filter down for dossier type. As we're only looking for our pre-registrations, from the dossier type drop-down list, we can select pre-registration. However, for many of you, this list can still be an exhaustive one. Therefore, you can use reference number, submission number, or substance identifiers also to filter down your list to a smaller, more manageable one. For the presentation, what we're doing here, we're going to take a look at one of the pre-registrations I have already submitted. we're going to take a look at substance X. This is the late pre-registration we have submitted. What we can see here, that is the late pre-registration is active, so it is valid. We can see the name of the substance and any numerical identifiers. First the EC or list number, and then the CAS number should it exist. It also displays the dossier type, that is a pre-registration, and also shows the contact information for this pre-registration. Unfortunately, Jane doesn't work for our company anymore, and we want to make sure that any potential co-registrant from the pre-SIEF page is easily able to contact us. Therefore, it's a good practice to keep our contact details up to date. To do so, we can click on the orange Edit button. That gets us to the by now already familiar Assign Contact Person page, where I can just select myself as the correct contact person and click on Assign. As you can see, the contact details have immediately been updated here, and therefore from now on anyone looking for the contact details from our company for this substance can easily find me. Should we wish to add a third-party representative at a later stage, i.e. not during the submission of the pre-registration, we can do it so from here by clicking on the Edit button. If you wish to modify any other detail, as in the expected tonnage band and the date of starting for manufacturing or importing, you can do so that by clicking on the orange Edit Pre-registration button in the upper right corner. It will guide you through the whole process with the same wizard style application as when we submitted the late pre-registration. An alternative way to find your pre-registrations would be via the pre-registration module in ReachIT. To get there, we can go back to the main page of ReachIT, select Menu, and select Pre-registrations and Pre-SIEFs. Again, here we will have all the pre-registrations listed, where we don't have to anymore filter down to see only pre-registrations. Furthermore, we can see a quick overview of the status of these pre-registrations. You can see if this pre-registration is active or inactive, and also you can see if there is already a facilitator within that pre-SIEF or not. Again, to continue with our presentation, I'm going to stick with our substance X and go to the pre-SIEF page of that substance. Here on the pre-SIEF page, again on the further left column, you can find the substance identification information with the name of the substance, the EC or list number, and the CAS number if it exists. Then you can see the contact information for the SIEF formation facilitator. In the next column, you can find information on the pre-SIEF, and you can see that the earliest registration date is from 1st of December 2016. The highest tonnage band is 10 to 100 tons. The pre-SIEF has 3 active members and 1 inactive member. And in the last column to the right, you can find information provided by the pre-SIEF facilitator. And this information can be anything regarding how to get in touch with the lead registrant or the consortium. It's mainly to provide support in new members in getting their way and finding their co-registrants. What else can we do from this page? The first orange button, called Export EC Substance, will download a Euclid file for you, and this file can be used then to create Euclid substance datasets and later on dossiers for this very specific substance. Next one is Export Pre-SIEF Description. Clicking on this button will allow you to download an XML file, which then later on opened in Excel will contain all the information, all the contact information on all the pre-SIEF members. By clicking on the Edit Pre-Registration button, you again get back to the Wizard style format where you can modify all information regarding your specific pre-registration. And using the last button called Deactivate, you can mark yourself inactive within the pre-SIEF, stating that for the time being you have no intention of registering this substance. Should this change in the future, you can come back to the pre-SIEF page and click on the same button, in which case it's called Activate. By clicking on this section of the page called Pre-SIEF Members, you get to see all the pre-SIEF members within this pre-SIEF. As a last part of our presentation today, I'm going to show you how to find a joint submission in ReachIT. We start again from the main page of ReachIT, where we click on the menu, and in the middle section under Joint Submissions, I select Search and View. By default, if my company would be part of any joint submission, they would be listed here automatically. But as I haven't yet joined any joint submission, this list is empty. However, since summer 2016, you are able to search for joint submissions of substances which you have pre-registered, inquired about, or have already registered. To do that, make sure to have the checkbox marked next to the Show Other Joint Submissions. By doing this, ReachIT will search for all the joint submissions where I have a substance relevant to that joint submission. To make the list as small as possible, I'm going to type in the substance identifier into the relevant field. And click on Search. As you can see, in a few seconds ReachIT comes up with the results, and I can see that there is a joint submission for this substance which I have pre-registered, and I can see the contact information to the lead registrant, making it very easy for me to get in touch with them. I can see the type of the registration, that this is a joint submission for full substance registration. And if there is any, I can see the supplementary information provided by the lead. To join the joint submission, I will have to get in touch with the lead registrant and acquire the name and the token for the joint submission, after which I can click on this orange Join the Joint Submission button, and I can confirm my membership within the joint submission. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
If you have any questions related to Catherine's and Istvan's presentations, you are welcome to send them using the Q&A panel visible in your webinar window. We will answer as many of them as possible through the Q&A panel. Don't forget that if your question is not covered by the end of the webinar, you can always submit it to your National Help Desk or to the ECHA Help Desk. Now it's time to watch a short video where companies share their experience on finding their co-registrants and working in SIEFs. We thought it would be a good idea to ask them for some tips that can help you in your work. First, let's wait a few seconds to make sure that you all have the video loaded before we start.
If a company approaches to the registration for the first time, my suggestion is to start as soon as possible.
Start now, because the registration process costs a lot of time, especially for substances without a consortium. The longer you wait, the higher the costs will become for consultants and labs?
Preparing for registration, we start consulting rich IT informations. In the past, we have pre-registered a lot of substances, but when we approach to the time of the deadline, we have to concentrate ourselves in the important substances we have in our portfolio.
First thing to do is make a REACH 2080 inventory. Make a list of all substances possibly need registration. Important items on this list are import volume or produced tonnage and the substance identity. The substance identity can be quite simple, but doesn't always have to be the case.
Especially for commercial people, it is difficult to take a decision of the substance you want to register. This is not the correct way for substances that belongs to core business.
Factor in the priority of a substance is whether this substance is necessary for your process.
We are preparing the analytical data set. That is the base to define, to identify the substance and the impurities we have in our substances. We evaluated all our non-European suppliers. We abandoned some non-European manufacturers that were not so active, helping us in the definition of the substances.
Understand the intentions of the other companies, and if they want to register, also to understand if they have experience. You have always to take into account the competition law.
It is important to know what are our duties and what are our rights. For an SME, it is important not to be scared to deal with the big companies.
Also, try to attend some seminars or courses in order to be updated and have a good understanding of the requirements.
You have to do things in a correct time and planning very carefully all the actions you have to do.
The way to find your co-registrants is to first to screen your substances and see on the ECHA website if the substance has been registered.
If the substances has been already registered, you have to contact the lead registrant and start the activities and the discussions with the lead registrant to know the substance information profile, the SIEF agreement, and so on. Do not worry to contact the lead registrant because they have to reply to you.
It has not been registered. You should go into your REACH IP and see who has registered. See if you can recognize the person or the company that has indicated that they will be SIEF facilitator.
Go to the pre-SIEF, contact the SIEF formation facilitator, or become it yourself. If there is no SIEF formation facilitator, best thing to do is sending an email to all SIEF members to ask for the registration intentions and which work they are prepared to do for the SIEF preparation. Do not expect a very high percentage of response to your email. Around 20% is quite a normal percentage.
I think it's important to have a good understanding of the companies you are working with. But it is also very important to start to talk about how to work together. There is some help to get within the industry organization, for example, SIEF.
In case there is a letter of access, simply contact the consortium, buy a letter of access, and then you can proceed with creation of your own dossier.
We have experiences in already registered substances, and for sure this is a simpler activity.
Things get more complicated with no consortium for the substance. How to share the work, how to share the costs, how to communicate, legal consequences, and my advice would really be to hire a REACH consultant for that, for setting up a consortium. For example, a consortium like the REACH Orphan Substance Consortium.
The nomination of lead registrant has taken place quite early in the process. It is important to being able to plan.
Another very useful aspect of the independent REACH consultant is the possibility to share commercial sensitive information without disclosing the identity of the company related to this information.
Hello, my name is Silvia De Mattio and I work on substance identification issues in ECHA. In this presentation, I will talk about the Substance Identity Profile, or SIP. So what is the SIP, what is a boundary composition, and what is a SIP for? The SIP is the name, the identifiers, for example the EC and CAS numbers, and the composition for the substance that is jointly registered. So for registering jointly, first you need to discuss if you have the same substance and agree on the name and identifiers to be used. You will also need to agree on what is the composition to be registered and to be linked to the data provided. The result of these discussions will be the substance identity profile. So what is a boundary composition? As we said, registrants need to agree on what is the composition that is actually covered by a certain data package. And this agreed composition is called the boundary composition. In practice, each registrant will have different compositions. And these differences will be taken into account when providing the data package. And this includes information on hazard assessment, PBT properties, and classification and labeling. Registrants are responsible for ensuring that the data package makes sense for all these compositions. And in their registration dossiers, they should report how the differences in compositions are considered when evaluating the properties of the registered substance. So the boundary composition sets what is the applicability of the data provided. It is the glue between the registrant's specific composition and the jointly reported hazard data, classification and labeling, and PBT assessment. So the boundary composition is essentially defined in terms of identity of constituents, including the impurities and their concentration ranges. And it may include additional identifiers, for example, in the case of UVCB substances, where manufacturing process description needs to be provided as well. And the SIP can evolve over time. For example, when a new member manufacturing a substance with different concentration levels joined the registration. And each registrant is responsible for ensuring that the data is appropriate for his specific composition. So it is important to ensure that the composition of your substance is within the boundary composition. Once agreed, the lead registrant has to report the boundary composition in his registration dossier. And you can report more than one boundary composition for the same substance, because depending on hazard considerations or fate, you may wish to report separate composition boundaries. For example, we can see the case of a multi-constituent substance consisting of two main constituents, A and B, the reaction mass of A and B. And this substance may be manufactured in different ways with different compositions. Some of the registrants may, for example, manufacture compositions including a hazardous impurity that triggers a different classification and labeling. And in this case, the name and identifiers for the substance will be the same. However, you may want to report separately the composition including the hazardous impurity. And in this way, you can link it easily to the classification and labeling information. So here, for one SIP, that is corresponding to the substance reaction mass of A and B, you will have two boundaries compositions. So what is a SIP and where does it come from? REACH introduces the one substance, one registration principle. And this is the principle for which registrants manufacturing or importing the same substance must come together and submit one registration. So for one substance, registrants must create one joint submission. And the concept of substance identity profile has been developed for facilitating putting in practice this principle. For ensuring clear communication through the various processes and the reach, it is essential that what is considered as the one substance that is registered is clear to everyone. And this is the reason why the SIEP is now required to be reported in Euclid. And it is meant to facilitate putting in practice the one substance, one registration principle. So the SIEP makes what is actually registered clearly visible. And this depends on the criteria set for defining if two substances are the same. And the hazard data provided in the registration dossier need to cover all the composition reported. And the SIEP facilitates registrants to report transparently their sameness criteria in their dossier. So with the SIEP, it is easy for member registrants to check if their composition is within the scope of the registered substance. And it will facilitate specific compositions to be linked more clearly with the submitted data. It facilitates also the assessment of the hazard information submitted jointly for complex substances. And with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
This presentation has been recorded and added to the webinar after its publication. Welcome back for this short presentation on how to find your co-registrants after the closure of the late pre-registration period from the 1st of June 2017 onwards. This is 1 year before the registration deadline of the 31st of May 2018. As we've seen earlier, your pre-registrations give you the right to be legally on the market until your registration deadline. If you did not pre-register, the default principle of no data, no market applies, meaning that you need to register the substance before you start manufacturing or importing 1 ton or more per year. Since you will need to register jointly, there is a way foreseen to find your co-registrants also when pre-registration is no longer possible. The pre-registrations you made in ReachIT will of course remain accessible to you in ReachIT, but you will not be able to make additional pre-registrations as of the 1st of June 2017. Instead, before registering a substance, you will need to submit an inquiry in ReachIT. We will explain how to do that and how, after your inquiry, you can find the lead registrant for the substance, your co-registrants, and the pre-SIEF. Let's start by looking at the information you will need for an inquiry, which is more information than for a pre-registration. You will need your substance identity, including the EC number, CAS number, and the name of the substance, but also information such as the molecular and structural formula and the molecular weight range of your substance. You will also need the composition of your substance, including the impurities present above 1% and the impurities that are relevant for the classification or the PBT assessment. You will also need the degree of purity and the concentrations of the constituents and impurities. Lastly, you will also need to have the lab reports available on your computer with the spectra and analytical data for the identification and quantification of your substance. When you have all this information, you can create your inquiry. Inquiries are created with Euclid. You will hear more about Euclid in the Phase 5 webinar on creating a registration dossier. Euclid is an IT application to manage information on chemicals. It exists as a downloadable version that you install on your computer, but there is also a cloud version available where you can create an account and get a space to create dossiers in the most up-to-date version of Euclid. When you create your inquiry in your Euclid database, you will later on have less work to create your registration dossier because the data you need to enter in Euclid for your inquiry you will also need for your registration. You will need to enter the identity of your substance in section 1.1 of Euclid, the composition in section 1.2, and the analytical information needs to be attached in section 1.4. My colleague Terhi gave a demonstration in the Phase 5 webinar on how to fill in these parts of section 1 in Euclid step by step, and it is exactly the same for an inquiry as for a registration dossier. Additionally, in section 14 of Euclid, you can inform which studies you would like to obtain access to, but this is not mandatory. To create the inquiry after you have entered this data, you need to select Reach Inquiry as dossier type. You can also use the validation assistant in Euclid to verify if all the mandatory information is present before you submit your inquiry. Your inquiry needs to be submitted in ReachIT, and I will now show you how. From the main page in ReachIT, click in the Submit a Dossier area and then click Inquiry. On this page, you have the link to the manual with detailed information on which information you need and how to create your inquiry. Click Upload the Euclid dossier and continue. Select your inquiry file from your computer and assign a contact person within your company, or if you do not want your co-registrants to know your identity, you can assign a third-party representative who will be shown as the registrant of the substance and will take care of the data sharing for you. Then you can continue, review your information, and confirm your submission. You will receive a submission number as proof of your submission. There is no fee for submitting an inquiry. After you have submitted your inquiry, it will be processed in ECHA. This can take several days. After it is processed, you will receive a message in ReachIT that your inquiry is accepted. It is possible that your inquiry is not accepted if the identity of your substance is not sufficiently clearly described, and then you will be given instructions on which further information to provide. But if your inquiry is accepted, you will have access to 3 functionalities that will help you to find your co-registrants. The first functionality is the co-registrants page. You can find the co-registrants page from the main menu in ReachIT by clicking on Co-registrants under Search in the second column. In this example, I have done only one inquiry and no registration so far, so I have only one co-registrants page available. In the co-registrants page, you can see the contact details of the other potential registrants that have successfully submitted an inquiry, if there are any. And you can see the registrants, if there are any, and then who the lead registrant is and who the member registrants are. Another way to access the co-registrants page, if you have few substances, is via the Substances area on the main menu. The next functionality to try is the Joint Submission page, which is accessible to those who inquired and those who pre-registered the substance. You can find the Joint Submission page from the main menu by clicking Search and View under Joint Submission. Make sure to check this tick box when you search, because otherwise you will only find joint submissions that you are already a member of. On the Joint Submission page, you will find the lead registrant if he has already created joint submission in ReachIT, even if he has not submitted his registration dossier yet. In this example, a lead registrant is nominated and his contact details can be found. If a lead registrant would not have been available, you would have to use the third functionality, which is the pre-SIEF page, which is also available to the pre-registrants. For inquirers, from the co-registrants page, you will soon have access to the pre-SIEF page, listing the contact details of those who pre-registered the same substance by EC number, CAS number, or chemical name. Be aware that you yourself, if you submitted an inquiry, will not be listed in the pre-SIEF, and that the pre-registrants listed in the pre-SIEF have no way to find you. So as an inquirer, you should actively seek out your co-registrants to work towards a joint submission. You have the possibility to become the lead registrant and create a joint submission in ReachIT, but since you are not a participant of the pre-SIEF, you cannot be a SIEF formation facilitator in ReachIT or post messages to the pre-SIEF. Also remember that if you did not pre-register your substance, the transition period for phase-in substances and the 2018 registration deadline do not apply, and you have to register the substance before you manufacture or import 1 ton or more of the substance per year. This can be challenging if the SIEF is still preparing the joint submission, so take that into consideration in your planning. This concludes my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention.
Now it's time to start our question and answer session. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for the numerous questions we've received during the webinar. We will now go through some of the most reoccurring ones together with our panel. I'm joined here today with Kevin Pollard and Catherine Cornu from the Dossier Submission Unit here in ECHA. Also, Silvia De Mattillo from the Substance Identity and Data Sharing Unit is here with us today. So, let's move on to the first question. Some of our participants are clearly eager to learn more about pre-registration and how it works. They're asking, can I register without pre-registering my substance?
Yeah, I can take this one. Let's put pre-registration in a wider context. So, one of the main principles of REACH is the OSOR principle, so one substance, one registration, meaning that companies intending to register the same substance have to register the substance jointly. So they have to share data to reduce the number of tests needed to avoid duplication of tests, in particular animal tests, and thereby reducing the cost for registrants. For companies to start with the sharing of the data, they need to find each other, and there's 2 mechanisms for that, of which pre-registration is one mechanism. So pre-registration is for phase-in substances. So those are substances that have been on the market since a long time before REACH started, and those substances are being registered or they're being phased in under REACH. So the phase-in was foreseen in 3 phases, with the first one a deadline in 2010, then a deadline in 2013, and then the next deadline, for which you are all preparing, is the 31st of May 2018. And in order for companies to benefit from these extended registration deadlines, they needed to pre-register. So pre-registration took place during 6 months in 2008. So for all the companies that were on the market at that time with those phase-in substances, they pre-registered in 2008, and once coming to the market with a phase-in substance, they can submit a late pre-registration. So that is for the pre-registration. The other mechanism is inquiry. So if you're developing a new substance, you need to register the substance before putting it on the market, and then before registration you would submit an inquiry to us with details on your substance, and we would inform you if there's any previous registrants of that substance, and give you the contact details so that you can get in contact and share the data and prepare to register jointly. So you can register, or you have to register without pre-registration for non-phase-in substances, and also for substances where the registration deadline is passed.
If I could jump in there and complement that, Adam. So I think it's important to keep in mind that these data sharing mechanisms, pre-registration and inquiry, very deliberate intent of the legislator that companies would be required to collaborate. That was actually to reduce costs to industry, and as Catherine mentioned, to reduce the unnecessary animal testing. So I hope it's well understood that there's a very good reason behind this. Again, from a practical perspective, for the vast majority of this audience, having pre-registered already in 2008 and preparing for the 2018 deadline, the main advice from our webinar is check whether or not there is meanwhile an existing registrant and move forward accordingly. In case you might be in a position where you would need to do a late pre-registration or potentially even have a new substance, again, I would recommend to look at the relevant pages on our website, which we'll walk through.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answer. Then we have a question on substance sameness. The person is asking, how do I know if the substance I manufacture is the same as the substance manufactured by the other members of the SIEF? Sylvia is our substance identity panelist.
I can take this one. So for most of you, the starting point will be the EC entry that was used for the pre-registration phase. And then for establishing a substance sameness, you need to know the composition of your substance and the identity of your substance. So this means that you need first to analyze your substance qualitatively and quantitatively. Normally, chromatographic data and spectroscopic data are sufficient, but if these techniques are not appropriate, then you will need to find alternative methods. So once you know the composition of your substance, you are able to define what type of substance you have. So you may have there are three different types of substances: monoconstituent substance, multi-constituent substance, and UVCB substances, that are the substances of a known or variable composition, complex reaction products, or biological materials. Monoconstituent substances are the ones where the one main constituent is present at concentration values more than 80% typically, and they are named on the basis of this main constituent. Multi-constituent substances instead have more than one main constituent, which is present at concentration values more than 10%, and are named on the basis of these constituents. Instead, UVCB substances are the ones that cannot be defined uniquely by their composition, and this may be because the number of constituents is large, or because part of the composition is unknown, or because the variability of the composition is large or poorly predictable. So for these type of substances, for determining sameness, you need not only to compare the composition, but especially the information you have on the source and on the relevant steps you have on the manufacturing process.
If I could also jump in there, Adam. So again, in this context, as with every element of REACH, the amount of information and the complexity is going to depend on your specific scenario. As you heard from Sylvia, 3 main categories of substance. So as a first step for you to understand which category you are in, and then move forward according to our specific advice, case by case.
Okay, thank you very much. Now for a more practical question. A person is asking, what should I do if the members of the pre-SIEF do not react to my emails about starting the organization of the SIEF? Okay.
Well, there's a number of things you can do, and also the industry associations have advice on this. So if you're sending emails and you get no replies to your emails, you could try contacting the companies another way, especially if you know the companies and you think they might be registering. You can also wait a bit and email them again later. and it's important to take a fresh download of the contact details of the companies in the pre-SIEF. So as companies start to verify their pre-registrations and update their contact details, you may find the correct person and get a reply back. In any case, document the attempts you make. And if after several attempts you still have no replies, then prepare to register alone. And you can, in Reach IT, you can become the SIEF formation facilitator, and then you can post a message in the pre-SIEF, so that when the others in the pre-SIEF decide that they will go ahead with the registration, that they can easily find you.
Okay.
Again, I'd like to put this also a little bit in context of some of our experiences. So it's quite well known by now that quite a number of pre-registrations were made where the company does not intend to follow through with a registration. The consequence of that, for example, in 2010, we had some industry, some companies who were telling us that the response rate could be as low as 20% in the pre-SIEF. So again, don't be too surprised if when you're sending these emails, if you get a relatively low response rate. The key thing is to document these efforts and move forward with those co-registrants who are active.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe if I can complement also, it's good to consider that the same substance in some cases can be identified by other manufacturers or importers using a different name or different identifiers. So they may have ended up in a different SIEF. So it's always good to check the list of pre-registered substances to see if there are other pre-SIEFs that you may want to join, and this could be also more responsive.
Okay, thank you very much. Now for a follow-up question on substance sameness. Should I register separately if my substance has different hazardous impurities than the other substances within the SIEF?
No, you need to register jointly, and you need, however, to take into account the presence of these impurities when you assess the properties of your substance. And normally for the well-defined substances, impurities are not determinant for defining sameness. However, you need to identify and quantify these impurities when they are present in concentration more than 1%, or they are relevant for the PBT assessment or for the classification of the substance.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Now for something a little different. What are ECHA's expectations for 2018, and what is ECHA going to do to activate lead registrants to make themselves known and help the 2018 registrants to join?
Okay, perhaps I could take this one. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. The chemicals market is quite dynamic. There's plenty turnover in certain areas. But based on our activities so far, we are looking in the range of something around 70,000 registrations, covering around 25,000 additional substances. So the scale is very high. And again, keeping that in perspective, this is closing the information gap on substances that have been on the market for quite some time. And from the perspective of a registrant for the 2018 deadline, three main scenarios that you could be facing. So if the substance has not already been registered, which would be quite often, you may find yourself in a relatively small SIEF, collaborating with a relatively small number of players. That makes things more straightforward in certain perspectives, but on the other hand, access to expertise and resource might be lower. So that's something to be aware of. In extreme cases, it may be that a registrant is on their own with a real specialty substance. We don't expect that in very high numbers, but let's see. And then, of course, the third scenario is where your substance has already been registered. There is already a lead registrant in place, which could, in many scenarios, be the most straightforward one for you. In terms of ECHA's role there, we have quite a comprehensive communication campaign between now and 2018. This webinar is part of it, of course. And we will be proactively contacting the leads to remind them of their obligations and encouraging them to proactively get involved with the new co-registrants.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. This will be the last question, and it's on late pre-registration. So we have a question saying the 3-year average tonnage for a phase-in substance I manufacture has recently gone above 1 ton. Can I still pre-register in order to benefit from the last registration deadline because I have been on the market longer than 6 months already?
Yes. So yes, the answer is yes, you can still late pre-register. So late pre-registration is for newcomers to the market, but new also in the sense of new to the registration obligations. So if you were previously on the market below 1 ton per year, you did not have registration obligations, but then when you go above 1 ton, your registration obligations start, and that's then also the date where the 6 months to submit your late pre-registration starts to count. And there's other similar cases. For example, if you had a supplier within Europe before and then you switch supplier and you start to import into the European Economic Area, then you have registration obligations, and then you can also submit your late pre-registration. But be aware that the last day to submit a late pre-registration is the 31st of May 2017, so 1 year before the registration deadline.
Okay, thank you very much. That's about all the time we have for today. Thank you to our panelists and presenters, and most of all, thank you to all of you for joining us today. If you don't receive an answer to your question by the time the webinar ends, please resubmit it to your national help desk or to our ECHA help desk. We will be happy to follow it through. Remember that you will be able to find a recording of the webinar and further support material on the REACH 2018 web pages. Our next webinar will be in March 2016. The topic will be the 3rd step of the registration process, which is working with your co-registrants in SIEFs. We will cover topics such as data share negotiations and costs, and the support we are providing you on these topics. You can already register for this webinar from our website. If you haven't already done so, remember to subscribe to our news from the ECHA homepage to stay up to date. I hope you found the webinar useful. When the webinar closes, you will be automatically redirected to a short feedback questionnaire. Please take the time to share your comments and suggestions with us so that we can further develop our webinars to meet your needs. See you again in March.